Welcome to the NewsHour. 5 Americans held for years by the regime in Iran are on their way home tonight, freed after high-stakes negotiations.
In return, the U.S. is granting clemency to Iranians held in American prisons and unfreezing almost $6 billion in assets held in South Korea. The U.S. says that money is now available to purchase humanitarian goods and equipment. For those freed from Iran today, it's the end of an ordeal. The 5 Americans flew towards freedom this morning. Imprisoned by the Iranian regime for years, released in a complex deal between the U.S. and Iran.
It's very good to be able to say that our fellow citizens are free after enduring something that I think it would be difficult for any of us to imagine.
Siamak Namazi, Emad Shargi, and Murad Tabaz were 3 of the 5 Americans on the flight from Tehran to Doha, Qatar. The other 2 detainees wish to remain anonymous. Each was held on various charges, but determined by the U.S. State Department to be wrongfully detained. In a statement, Emad Shargi's sister, Neda, said, quote, "This is my brother, not an abstract policy. We're talking about human lives. There's nothing partisan about saving the lives of innocent Americans, and today should be a moment of American unity as we welcome them home." In a deal struck with the Iranians, the 5 Americans were released in exchange for grants of clemency by the U.S. government for 5 Iranian nationals: Kaveh Lotfollah Afrasiabi, Mehrdad Ansari, Amin Hassanzadeh, Reza Sarangpur Kafrani, and Kambiz Atar Kashani, and the transfer of $6 billion in frozen Iranian assets held in South Korea to a restricted account in Qatar. Iran can only use the funds for humanitarian purposes. 2 of the 5 Iranians released, Kafrani and Ansari, were seen in Qatar headed back to Iran.
We
are hoping to get the Iranian assets under full control today, and the funds are deposited into the account of the Islamic Republic of Iran, announced in a friendly regional country.
Some lawmakers have been critical of the Biden administration for making a deal with Iran.
Even a simple prisoner swap would still be grossly unjust because, again, the Americans Iran have done nothing wrong.
But U.S. officials have defended the agreement.
When we're trying to bring Americans home, we often aren't dealing on a level playing field. We have to use the leverage we have to bring them home. They aren't going to be released for nothing in exchange.
In New York, for the United Nations General Assembly, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi met this morning with journalists and said the exchange may lead to further dialogue between the U.S. and Iran. Let's hear more from someone close to one of the Americans released today, Jared Genzer, a human rights attorney and pro bono counsel for the family of Siamak Namazi. He's worked on the campaign for Namazi's release and joins us now from Geneva. Jared, welcome. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So Siamak had been held for nearly 8 years. Have you spoken directly with him since he has been freed? Has his family?
Yeah, I have. In fact, he gave me a call right before they took off to say they were about to be wheels up. And then when he landed, I saw on a big screen in my hotel room, him coming down the stairs, which was kind of an extraordinary moment for me and kind of surreal, given how much time I've spent with him over so many years, not only talking to him, but advocating around the world with his family. And a short time after he came down the stairs, he gave me a call and said, with a huge amount of joy, "Jared, I'm free." And this is what we'd all been waiting for.
You tweeted a photo of him with a great big smile. He looks just about as happy as anyone could be. We know he's going to be assessed medically and psychologically, right, as be given the support that he needs for former detainees and hostages. And we all remember this desperate, high-risk interview he gave back in March from inside Evin prison. But what can you tell us about his mental state, his emotional state?
Well, I mean, I think, I've been through this many times with clients of mine who have been hostages, American hostages around the world. And, it's overwhelming, the enormity of it. I mean, this is, obviously front page news, top story, all around the world. And he's living it. Right. And, he knew it was coming, obviously. He had been under house arrest for a number of weeks with the other hostages. And, we had a lot of conversations about how this was going to feel. And often it feels a little bit like an out of body experience. I mean, you've been hoping and praying this day would finally come. But when it does, it kind of sneaks up on you. And, and there are 2 aspects of it that are so difficult. One is what he's been through and ultimately having to kind of unclench his fist after years and years and years of having to stand up to the regime in order to survive. And then the other one is he's lost some of the best years of his life. And, he wants to get married and have kids, and he needs to find a job and a place to live. And, all these details that you can imagine that a person would have to go through in these circumstances. So it's going to take him some time to get his bearing. I've encouraged him to take it slow and one step at a time and not jump in with both feet. And, I think ultimately the media will recede and he'll be able to return to his life. But, it's important to remember that, it wasn't just Siamak who was a hostage, but his father, Baher Namazi, was famously a hostage after going back to try to see him in prison where he had been held incommunicado in Iran, and himself, detained at the age of 79 and spent 3 years in Evin prison, not ever seeing his son, but near him, and almost dying there. And then several more years trapped in Iran despite his sentence having been commuted. And, Baher Namazi only got out about a year and a half ago. So, this has been one extraordinary and horrific ordeal for the family. And in a few hours, for the first time in 9 or 10 years, the family will finally be together.
We heard some powerful statements, read some powerful statements from the families today, of course. Bahareh Shargi, who's Emad Shargi's wife, said in a phone call to the president earlier today, quote, "This was the first time in 5 years that we once again have light in our home." Morad Tabaz's family thanked President Biden for, quote, "making the difficult but necessary decision to prioritize the lives of American citizens over politics." Siamak echoed that gratitude in his statement, and he also said, 2,898 days of which should have been the best days of my life were stolen from me and supplanted with torment. What I want more than anything is assurance no one else will know the interminable anguish that my family and I experienced. Jared, as you know, there's an argument out there that this was not a good deal, that this will encourage more hostage taking. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I approach this as a human rights partisan, not a political one. And the reality is that Republican and Democratic presidents, going back to the hostage taking in 79 and going back to the beginning of our history, have wrestled with this issue and failed repeatedly to address it. For the Namazis, it's worth noting that they felt no difference in the policies of Barack Obama and Donald Trump. And let me just explain briefly what I mean. Siamak Namazi was left behind by President Obama in the hostage deal, along with the nuclear deal in 2016. And, from there, Secretary Kerry told the family, he'll be out in a couple of weeks. This is what we've heard. Instead, Baher Namazi got detained. And by the end of the Obama administration, both Baher Namazi and Siamak Namazi were hostages and had 10-year sentences for collaborating with the enemy. Then President Trump comes along, and we hope, along with the family, I hope, that, President Trump is talking about maximum pressure on Iran. And we're like, great, maximum pressure. Let's see if that works, right? And it turns out that the maximum pressure campaign in Iran was a zero pressure policy on American hostages. Indeed, there was not a single action taken by President Trump to put any pressure on Iran that directly connected to hostages that had any impact. And so 4 years later, not only were the Namazis still in jail, but despite having been promised at the beginning of the administration that it wouldn't happen, the Namazis were left behind 2 more times, where Americans that were taken later were, deals were struck to get them out, and the Namazis were again left behind. So what's the difference for the Namazis between Donald Trump and Barack Obama? And the answer is nothing. And the reason is because, tragically, no administration seems to take this issue as a serious priority. I'm very glad that President Biden got this done, but the reality is that this is not a top priority of this administration, really, or any other. And the reality is that we need to take a dramatically different direction if we want to end the practice of state-sponsored hostage taking.
Jared, the work to try to free these Americans had stopped and started multiple times over the many years. What made the difference this time?
Well, I think that this is the biggest challenge of taking on a case where you're talking about a hostage in Iran because of the very long and detailed history and difficult history. The reality is you have to get both countries to come together at the same time and be willing to talk. And there are 1,000 things conspiring against you to have that happen in that sequence. And so I think that this is the tragic reality that we've dealt with. Over the course of our country's history, and especially going back to 79, which is we have many higher priorities with Iran, nuclear issues, missiles, terrorism, and other kinds of things. And the reality is that no administration has really focused on the freeing of American hostages as a priority within the overall Iran policy framework for the United States. And, this is what has to change, in my view. The reality is that it is a wonderful thing for a dictator and a country like Iran to be able to take hostages. There's no consequence when they do so. And eventually all countries around the world, including the United States, ultimately cave and strike a deal. And we've seen this happen over and over and over again. And so what we need is draconian disincentives to be created, not just by the U.S., but by the U.S. working with like dozens of countries around the world, so that if one hostage is taken from one country, 30 or 40 countries come down like a ton of bricks on the back of that country and dramatically change and disrupt the value proposition of taking hostages in the first place.
That is Jared Genzer, human rights attorney and pro bono counsel for the family of Siamak Namazi, who's just been freed after nearly 8 years detention in Iran. Jared, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.